guys. This is Gina from CFM, and we're tuning in for another conversation with our next choreographers for the lineup for this summer. So, as we mentioned last week, CFM is a community for the creatives who use the arts as an expression of faith. Not last week. We started like 2 weeks ago. But yes, so we started off with our kickoff summer workshop with Pastor Brian Lee. And as we've mentioned, we wanted to create these summer workshops to kind of open up the opportunity to connect with the dancers in the community. And so with that being said, we have the next choreographers in our lineup, which are James Yoon and Kevin Lee from New Jersey. And they were both part of a dance ministry called Reach that is in Rutgers University. They both had an opportunity to co-lead and to choreograph for this ministry. And today we invited them to just have a conversation to get to know them a little bit before their workshop this Saturday. So with that being said, James and Kevin, thank you guys so much for taking this time to have a short conversation with me and Pastor Brian. Hi.
Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thank you for having us. This is exciting.
It's good to see you guys outside of practice.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Pastor Brian. Like, I forgot. Do you want to introduce yourself too?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like the spotlight's definitely more on Kevin and James this week, but I served with Kevin and James for a while, so on Reach. So I'm just here, to facilitate and hopefully hopefully you guys feel a little bit more welcome, right? And kind of seeing a familiar face. maybe my face is not as welcoming as as you might hope, but hopefully you guys feel welcome, and we're excited to hear more about your particular experiences in dance and in your faith as well. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So the first question I guess we just wanted to open up with, as dancers, what started your dance journey? Whoever wants to start can go.
Ooh. I can actually hop in first. As soon as I think about what started my dance journey, I just immediately look back to when I was in like middle school and just America's Best Dance Crew was on television. I think right, for a lot of people like our age, like like millennials who grew up in like the mid 90s, early 2000s. I think that was huge for me, America's Best Dance Crew. And then also I was really into a lot of like the music, like, Chris Brown music videos, where they had actual dancers like dancing with him on the set. And then lastly, b-boying, of course, was huge for me growing up in the church. Just seeing like those older guys doing, like putting the tables aside, breakdancing like after service or whatever. I think that really left a big impact on me. So those were kind of the seeds that planted the dance love that I have right now. So yeah, that's for me.
I didn't know you were a b-boy, James.
I mean, I wasn't. I tried, but I don't think you can say I definitely was.
It's like the story for all of us.
A lot of dancers start off with breakdancing.
We start with b-boying, and
you learn your 6-step and baby freeze, and you're not fit enough to do the other stuff. So you
quickly learn your limitations.
Exactly. Yeah, so I definitely didn't have the athleticism or the discipline, because b-boys are very disciplined. Yeah. So I didn't have that. So I went on to choreography, but yeah.
I see. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Kevin? What started your dance journey?
I mean, mine is like super similar to James, actually. Like, it's also ABDC, like America's Best Dance Crew. Then, so I grew up like watching that a lot, followed a lot of the dance teams from there. And then, I mean, I think that's like really what kickstarted it all for me. And then, like, I also grew up around like some b-boys. So like, I was like the typical like 6-step b-boy, but, but yeah, once I got to college, I had the opportunity to like join Reach and then like explore more and like, I guess like partake in it more than observe, and like from there I kind of just fell in love with it.
Kevin, how did we meet? How did you join Reach?
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to out you, buddy. So Pastor Brian and I actually originally met because we were both competing for a male beauty pageant called Mr. KSA.
Oh way!
Yeah, but people think that I only joined a Reach because of that, but that's not true. I like heard of it beforehand, and then I was like, oh yeah, like I do want to like get around to checking it out, but like I guess it just like it was like kind of like put it in my face, like oh yeah, here's like the person who like founded the ministry. But yeah,
That's
Pastor
funny.
Brian and I met through Mr. KSA.
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't call it a beauty pageant. I just say it's a pageant. Okay.
no, I say male
It's just
beauty pageant.
it's just a pageant. All right.
Yeah, Pastor Brian Lee actually won that year too. So he was
Really?
he was 2014 Mr. KSA.
Yes, he was.
Wow.
This interview is not about me.
Wow.
So let's,
I'm
keep on track.
learning new things about you, Pastor Brian.
Let's stay focused.
Male beauty pageant. Male beauty pageant. You probably charmed them with your dancing, huh?
I don't know about that. We'll see.
I see. Thanks for sharing, guys. So I guess, just kind of bouncing off, both of you starting off with watching ABDC. I think a lot of us, like James mentioned, a lot of the millennials grew up watching ABDC in the beginning. And I remember for me, it was so exciting to see because I started watching them from YouTube. And then to watch them on like national television, I was like, oh my goodness, this is big, right? So a lot of us started from there. So I just want to ask, like, who are some of your dance influences? Like, what would who best represents like your style or influenced your style of dancing? Whoever wants to hop on first.
I could go ahead. I think when I was just really fascinated by the way the Jabberwockies danced. I mean, of course, everyone was at first. But I quickly learned that I couldn't copy that style because they're just so original with everything they do. But as I got into more choreography and like team-based dancing, I actually really, really enjoy Lyle Beniga. And I think I kind of see him very, very influentially in dance, especially because of how athletic he is when he dances. I think that's something I really look for, just with dancers or even in like random dance videos. I really enjoy seeing like how, dancers, I guess, showing their athleticism while they dance. So, I mean, I don't know if that, you definitely can't say that my style is similar to his because he's just on another different level. But I would say I definitely took influence from him. And so, my own dance style, I think, is just very like footwork based. I like to say is that like I like to really create all the energy where I'm dancing like from my feet, like from the bottom. But yeah, that's definitely, Lyle was definitely huge for me. And he was one of the first people I think who was really posting a lot of stuff like on YouTube, at least that I saw.
Yeah.
And then YouTube was just it just captured like such a big audience. So
right.
Yeah.
I think Lyle was like a karate champion at some point or something like that.
He was, yeah.
I think it explains a lot of it. Yeah, explains definitely a lot of his athleticism.
Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting. I had no idea. I was a huge fan of Lyle also.
Yeah, martial arts plays a big part in, I think, his style, for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Kevin, what about you?
For my dance influences, I mean, from ABDC at least, I think I was like wowed originally by like Quest Crew. Yeah, and like I think a lot of that like community was just by like their like wow factor, I guess. But I think once I actually started dancing, cause like they were like limited, like I couldn't do a lot of the stuff like they did. Like Steve Torreta, like his like tricking was like ridiculous, and then like they're just like there were limits. But I think once I started dancing, like one person that I like really like I guess was fixated on is like, and like to this day still is Chris Martin. I think for me, like it's his fluidity, like the way that he moves from move to move, and like the way that he transitions those things, and like I think it really plays a big part into how he interprets the musicality. Because I'm also a musician, and like that like really resonates with me. So, I think I mean, like, I don't think the way that I choreograph is similar to him. I think it shows more in my freestyle, if anything, but like, and like where I want to grow as a dancer. So I can't say my style is like the same as his, but I can say that like the ways that I want to grow are greatly influenced by like the impact that like he's put on me.
Kevin, what do you play? You mentioned that you're a musician.
I mainly play guitar and drums. I play drums for like my church too for worship.
Kevin, you failed to mention that you're also quite the singer.
I am not I don't identify as a singer, actually.
So very well-rounded, talented folk in here.
It's what is that? What is that? Multi-kill? When you have
Multi-talented?
multi-talented? It was
Yeah.
there's that phrase, but that's so cool though. I mean, your mic kind of shows that if you record music,
Oh,
you know how
I
the
don't
singers
record.
have that kind of mic.
This is because I was too lazy to hold my phone when I was video chatting. I got a video because we used to meet like weekly for Reach and like other stuff too. So I was like, yeah, I just want a mic and a webcam so I can just relax on my chair.
Yeah. I have a question, and I think this might kind of maybe transition a little bit more into kind of the I guess the purpose and like the vision behind CFM is for us, CFM exists, and in I guess collecting the dancers in the community and kind of utilizing our arts and talents. At the end of the day, what we want is for that to be a place where the gospel can be spread. So yeah, maybe if one of you could kind of talk a little bit about how I guess your faith, right, your Christian faith has kind of played into dance, and I guess maybe even just talk about like how that kind of like how did faith and dance meet? And this could be any one of you.
Kevin, I'll toss that to you first. I think I might need a minute to conjure my answer.
I mean, I think for me, when I think about dance, I think about expression, and it's strange because I'm not a very expressive person. Actually, if you get to know me, I'm very like stoic, and I don't think I'm very expressive in the way that I like interact with people. It like honestly, when I stepped up to be like a leader originally at Reach, I heard that a lot of people were intimidated by me. And I think it's because of that, but I think it's because of faith that I was able to like learn what it means to express through dance. And yeah, just because like until I personally had like the faith aspect, like it was just moves and like it was just looking cool. But because I was able to do so in an environment where it's correlated with faith, I was able to actually channel in like, what is this intended to portray? What is this intended to do? And it wasn't about like self-improvement or like, it wasn't about like proving something as a dancer at that point. It was purely about expression. And because of that, like, someone like me was able to learn like, how dance could truly be expressive. And it's like solely because of faith that I was able to learn that. And yeah, I think that doesn't just show in like my dancing experience either, but I think it shows in like, I mentioned earlier that I'm a musician too. And I think it shows in like music too. Like when, like if it was just about like learning like, like scales or like learning how to stay on tempo, like it's just learning a skill set. But because I was able to do so in an atmosphere with where faith is integrated, I learned to be a lot more expressive in like the way that I play music as well. So I think it really plays in a factor of like, really turning these arts into worship.
Amen.
Yeah, I can definitely say for myself, the connection of faith and dance was met when I started meeting dancers who I also realized were passionate for the church and just, passionate believers. And I think I never made that connection at first because dance was the first thing that was introduced to me. So I just saw, passionate dancers and people who love the art and people who are creative. But then stepping into a place where I found that people were not only creative in dancing and all of that, but additionally, they were just strong, who just loved God. Like they loved the gospel. They just loved serving God. They loved worshiping God. And I think when I saw that, I was very confused at first because I was like, how can you do those two things at once, you know, like they seem very opposite. But the more and more I just became involved with, with people, people like Kevin and Brian that I met, and so many others that, I've been blessed to meet throughout my college experience. I think seeing how people were able to carry both of those passions, and they weren't set, they weren't compartmentalized. They were actually joined together in one, as Kevin was talking about, making dance worship. I think for me, that's when faith and dance was like, it wasn't separated out anymore. I think it really became like a singular idea for me.
James, would you say that for you, at least, I guess for either of you, was the dance community kind of like your first context, or was like the church?
Context in just community in general?
Yeah, just like, what were you more familiar with?
Oh, I mean, definitely the dance community I was much more familiar and comfortable with at first, for sure. I think that was the first introduction of like really close community.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I grew up in the church, but I think the dance community definitely had like a special lore like to me when I was like first introduced to it. Like I could definitely see that like it wasn't just because like I was in like a Christian dance community, but I think the way that dance communities just tend to be, like I do think there is like an intimacy, and I think that's like both like a beautiful and also like a dangerous thing. So I was very grateful to like have been in a Christian dance community, but yeah, I was able to see where like, there were some like intimacies that like I wanted to bring to the church. But likewise, like there were definitely things from the church that I wanted to like, or like from the ministry that I wanted to see more in a dance community, if that makes sense.
This is just kind of a question off the top of my head, but I know that both of you two are very faithful, and you guys have a big part in playing, or I guess you guys serve a big part in your own church. Can you maybe talk about any of the experience between, I guess, how that plays into just your life in dance?
Sorry, if you could rephrase it. So like how dance has entered into the way we serve, or
I guess like, how does you guys, or how does you being, so active and serving in the church? Because I think, at least in my experience, dance takes up so much time, right? It takes up such a huge, chunk of our lives when we get really plugged in. But I think, and I've seen a lot of people kind of, spend a lot of time in dance. And in a way, sometimes even neglect the church. But you guys have been, at least from my experience with you, you guys have been really faithful and serving at the church and really loving the church. I guess, is there any kind of like thoughts or things that you might want to share about that, to dancers out there, especially like people like Christian dancers?
Right. Well, I can mention a small thing is that actually this past winter, our church always kind of has like this talent show / coffee house or whatever. And so I think some of the youth kids just mentioned that they wanted to do a dance, and obviously they knew I was part of a dance team. So after the help of reaching out to a couple friends and just like choreographing like a quick like 45-second thing, like we danced for our whole church. And that was awesome because the fun part wasn't just performing, but I think it was practicing with them every week and just seeing them like really like hunker down and want to practice and like staying after and like, just fellowship. It was really cool seeing how those things were brought together for something like, something for a talent show for youth kids. It's just something that's fun and just to pass off. But for me, it was like a cool opportunity to bring those two worlds together.
I mean, I think I served a lot in the church while I was also dancing. I think Pastor Brian and James both know. Because I was leading small group. I was part of worship team, and then on top of that, I was helping lead Reach, and there were just a lot of things on my plate. But I think the biggest thing I learned is because the people around me would kind of like question, and even like my pastor, they would be like, "Oh, like, do you really have to do like this, or like, do you really have to do that?" Because at some point, the time is very limited. So it comes down to like, oh, how hard do you want to push yourself, and also like, are you actually able to do this? And I think the biggest thing that what during those times where I would contemplate, like, man, like, is it time to like drop this, or like, what should I drop from, you know, all my responsibilities? It's like, I think the one thing I learned is to not just go by a pros and cons list, because yeah, like, a lot of times people will ask like, oh yeah, but like, are you really benefiting from this? And like, honestly, a lot of times, like, we'll always be able to find a benefit in whatever we're doing. You know, like, I think that's just like how, like, we were doing it for a reason to begin with. Like, we're going to be able to find like pros, and we're going to be able to convince ourselves to do it if we just go off that. But, you know, I think the deeper question is like, oh, like, one, like, is this what God wants you to do? Like, and it takes a lot of like deliberation and prayer in that. And also, or like, do you feel like you're growing here? Do you feel like you're growing in what you're doing? And for me, like, I actually joined the organization that had that did the pageant that Pastor Brian and I were part of, just as like a resume builder. But at the end of the day, like, I dropped it, not because I didn't enjoy it, but just because, like, at the end of the day, like, it was just building up my worldly self, you know? And yeah, like, I think in order to do what God wants, we have to place value where God puts value.
Right.
And that shows in where we're serving and what we're doing. So I think that's the biggest thing I took away.
I'll direct this one kind of last question from me to James, because James, I know you have had experiences. I think Kevin, for the most part, like, you've been with me for Reach like all this time, but James, you've had experiences, you know, not just in a faith, you know, based team, but also like, you know, outside of that. And so maybe, you know, what are some of the differences, and yeah, what are some of the differences in your experiences between, like, you know, Reach, which is a Christian dance ministry, and then maybe some of your experiences, you know, outside of that?
Right. Well, I guess before I mention the differences, I think just in general, my experience, you know, just being a part of a dance community was actually really great. And I actually mentioned that before, but dance communities came first for me. And I think dance communities are so powerful in making you feel like you're a part of something, making you feel included in like a bigger circle. And there were just moments I remember we were just like always with each other, practicing, like getting food, hanging out. And even in the dance community, so many people do life outside of dance, right? So many people just, you know, they bring in their, you know, they come to practice, they dance, but then outside of dance too, like they call each other their, you know, friends and community. So I think I was really marked by that, and I was really appreciative of that experience. And, you know, the funny thing is like, you asked me that question, right? Like, what's the difference? And, you know, I'll get to, I guess, the bigger difference later, but up front, there's really not much of a difference. And I think that's kind of a good thing. You know, to be honest, like, I think, you know, as I mentioned, dance communities are powerful, and really both of them have like a singular goal, right? You know, I think obviously for faith-based dance teams, you want to connect more to the church, and you know, there's like a deeper meaning to it. But even for, you know, regular dance teams, I think like they're so goal oriented, and, you know, whether it's competitions or, I don't know, like opening a studio or teaching the next generation, like dance communities themselves are so I guess invested in where they are and also in their people. So you know, I think the reality is that like there isn't much of a difference, but honestly, sometimes I see that as a good thing, where like faith-based dance teams are also not making themselves so foreign for other dancers to be welcomed in, right? Like if they came into a faith-based dance team and like everything was different about it, then they'd kind of be thrown off, like, are we even dancing here? But because we're kind of like in that medium or that bridge of allowing people to feel like they're comfortable here, you know, I think that's a good ground for people to also feel like they want to, you know, open up to the gospel or to the church. So, but I would say, you know, just to close this thought out, the biggest difference obviously is that end goal, right? Like for the faith-based dance team, the end goal is to bring people into a community. If they're not already a part of one, or if they are part of one, I think it turns into like a discipleship, where it becomes, oh, like how do you use your, you know, your creative side or your artful side to worship God, you know, and that's through your dance team, through your, you know, through your reach, or you know, there's a couple teams in New York. I'm blanking out on the names. I'm sorry, but you know, like that. I think that's their end goal, is like for the church, like the big, you know, the big C, big church, to like be united in that. And yeah, I mean, I think faith-based dance teams definitely have like their, you know, their place. And you know, even my experience in reach was awesome. So I think, you know, differences aren't very apparent at first, but I think if you look closely, they're there.
I love how you mentioned how Reach was very opening and very welcoming, and not just Christians, but just for dancers in general. I, I, I appreciate and I'm really grateful for that aspect, because like, I think the only dance teams that I've been a part of were only filled with Christians who are dancers, you know, and I've never seen it that way, where it was like open and welcome to other dancers, you know, and be able to lead them to the gospel that way. I love how you said there's not much of a difference, right? Because both, you know, both have a goal in dancing, both have an end goal in presenting this form of art. But the difference is that, you know, one has a foundation in Jesus and the other one is just purely dance. And so I think to tie that in, that's where CFM kind of wants to lead as a ministry, to kind of open this network to be able to welcome those dancers, just like you guys did in Reach, right? And that's why we started this workshop, this online series, and welcoming, you know, those dancers. And so with the workshop that you guys have coming up, I want to ask you guys, like, what is the inspiration behind the workshop that you guys have planned for us?
I don't know. Kevin and I are kind of laughing because it's a really big coincidence, but I'll let him tell the story on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're laughing because James and I actually hopped on a call, I think sometime last week, and we were just talking about like, man, like what, like when we're teaching, like what should we say our inspirational is? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like that's something that we should have thought about before we made the piece. So we didn't really hit a conclusion there.
But you know, I think the funny thing is that Kevin and I were already, and this was probably a couple months ago, if I'm remembering correctly. But Kevin and I were already just kind of like thinking of doing a collab, and just like, you know, dancing online, because it was so long since we danced. And so you know, like I hit up Kevin. I was like, Kevin, you want to do this song? Like, or let's choose a song. Let's choose a dance. Let's choreograph to this. And then lo and behold, like a week later, I think, you know, you guys reach out to us saying like, hey, there's an online workshop, and we're like, oh, we have a piece ready. You know, like how, you know, like how, I guess, how much of a coincidence is that? But yeah, it's just a little funny story that we magically were choreographing right when you guys asked us. So
yeah, but I guess like inspiration for the piece that we're teaching was just to grow. And I think it kind of goes into like a little bit of what we were talking about just because I was part of Reach back when we did have a lot of non-believers on our team, and then you know, unfortunately, a lot of them left to join other dance teams that they felt were more accomplished, that they felt were more talented, that had more to offer to them. But one reason that I personally want to continue to grow as a Christian artist is because I want to fight the notion that Christian art is whack. Like, because I think there's an unspoken opinion about faith and art where they just feel that it's inferior to secular art, but I really don't think that's true. And I think that we can speak from, you know, as dancers, like some of our personal, like, you know, inspirations, like Keone Madrid, like top of the world, but also bold in his faith. And there are so many others like that as well. So I think the inspiration was just to kind of like not be complacent during the quarantine. And James and I originally hit each other up just to continue to grow as dancers.
yeah.
Wow, that was so good. That's so good. Thank you guys for sharing. I guess just to kind of wrap up this conversation, so as Christian dancers, right? So from your personal experiences with dance, but also your own individual walks with God, what's one encouragement that you can give to other aspiring Christian dancers?
Hmm. I don't know if I'm warranted to give out advice because I feel like I'm right there with those people. But I think one thing I learned is don't be shy and take opportunities that you can get to meet people. Um, and I think a small way I learned that was like going to classes, whether they're run by a faith-based dance team or not, whether it's just like a regular studio. I think like don't be shy, step in and dance your heart out. You might not be like one of the, you might get like owned that day, but I think that's a great feeling, is like getting your butt kicked and then like being really humbled, but also like having that experience of like, hey, I think I stepped out and like I invested in this art form, kind of like Kevin was saying. Is like, just because it's Christian and just because we're a faith-based like art doesn't mean it has to be like a level lower than the secular or or like the worldly one. Like it can be just as good. And I think taking those opportunities to invest in that, I think is what the advice I would give.
I think for me, I think dancing is very what's the word? Very vulnerable. That's the word. I think dancing as an art form is very vulnerable, just because like it's your body. And then for a lot of aspiring dancers, and like James said, like I fall in that category, but I think that can be something that's very like scary and intimidating to pursue. But I just encourage you guys to just enjoy the ride, because I think a lot of times we're discouraged because we have ambitions to be great, but at the end of the day, like I shared earlier, like dance is just expression, and it's not about like becoming the best that you envision, but it's just about enjoying the ride and just about enjoying the art. And one like thing that I kind of just live life by is just, if you enjoy it, then you'll get good at it because you'll invest into it. So just enjoy it and just have fun with it, and then in that, like, you'll come to like practice, you'll come to grow, and then you'll come to just deeper as you grow. Like you'll come to deeper enjoy and understand the art that you're investing in.
Right.
Amen to that.
That's so good. Yeah, it's a whole process, right? It's a whole process. All right. Thank you guys so much for sharing. PB Lee, anything else?
I think that's it. I'm glad. I'm glad you guys hopped on, and it's good to see. I mean, I see you guys pretty often, but it's good to hear you guys. I know. I think this is my first time kind of listening to you guys talk in like an interview context. So yeah, I'm glad. But yeah, Gina, I don't know if you want to wrap us up with some of the info for the coming up workshop.
So their workshop, James and Kevin's workshop, is this Saturday on July 11th. Same as our last workshop with Pastor Brian Lee, it will be held on Zoom. So just know that it's on Zoom. It's on July 11th, this Saturday at 8 p.m. And the registration link will be on our Instagram bio. And so you can find the registration link over there. And the registration link will actually hold all the workshops we'll be holding for the remainder of the summer. So all you have to do is just choose the ones that you can attend. And this will just help us let us know that you're coming, so we can be aware of who's going to be there. And that is it. We will see James and Kevin this Saturday with the piece that they have. James and Kevin, can you just quickly introduce the song that you're going to be teaching this Saturday? I forgot what it was called.
Everything We Need by Kanye West, off his new album, Jesus is King. So
it's a good one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It's a good one. And so if you guys want to take a listen before the workshop, you guys are free to do so. So hit up that registration link and we will see you this Saturday. Bye, guys.
Alrighty. All right. See you there.